Okay, so I managed to get into the beta for Chrono Odyssey, so here are some early impressions. Very quickly, what's going on? Well, your world is being ravished by monsters called the Void, but you are sent back in time by this lady called Velia, so you can rewrite the events of your world. Hence, Chrono Odyssey. So you join with Velia, become a sentinel, and it is now your job to weaken the Void in your lands so you can hopefully set things right. So what kind of MMO are we dealing with here? Well, I've always said that gacha has killed MMOs, so I think the easiest comparison is imagine Wuthering Waves, but it's a Korean MMO that doesn't run very well. Of course, the major difference being to gacha that you are one character and all your gacha is in the gathering and harvesting of items in the world. Eventually, you'll have access to the Sorcerer, Assassin, Ranger, Paladin, Berserker, and Swordsman, all of which can specialize in 3 weapons where you have 2 weapon loadout swaps which you swap on the fly. Unfortunately, only the Ranger, Swordsman, and Berserker were available to play. None of these are gender locked. I chose the Swordsman because great swords are great, but once you get through the tutorial and into the main settlement, you can pretty much go anywhere and do anything. Your main quest is to find the Chrono Gates, which lead you to challenging Souls-like boss fights, a lot like Wuthering Waves. It is a large area and it would be mighty challenging to do that straight away at level 5. So you are pretty heavily incentivized to level up a bit and improve your gear. And to do that, you'll want to take on quests and bounties. But how do you get better gear? Well, you can try to get them through quests, but the easiest way will be through crafting. So for example, first you need a pickaxe, then you need to find an iron node that gives you iron ore. You then process that into ingots, and then you have one of the 3 materials required to get a better sword. Traveling around the world, you're going to come across your bounties, area-based missions, trials, hidden chests, world bosses, party-based quests. It's all stuff that you've kind of seen in other MMOs in the past. But if you want to know how it feels, if you play any open world gacha, you will be very familiar with the boxes of stuff hidden everywhere thing. And so in that way, Chrono Odyssey is a lot less hand-holdy than classic MMOs. Its most similar comparison is New World. As I said, it's not designed so that you just follow the quest marker. For example, you can get your mount straight away, but you don't know that the vendor is pretty far away from the first settlement. Figuring out your own path through the world is half the fun. You unlock portions of the map by interacting with these temples, kind of like a Ubisoft game, and then you also have quick travel through these beacons as well. So yeah, exploration is key, and I think also the key to enjoying this kind of game is to figure it out without guides as much as possible. That's just what I think. I think guides will ruin the experience of this game, as it does for just about every game where the game is the journey, but that's just my opinion. The combat is action combat. As I said, you have 2 weapons and 4 ability slots per weapon, so 8 in total with weapon swapping. Each weapon has a special ability. For example, the sword and shield can block to mitigate damage, and blocking at the right time performs a parry riposte situation. The great sword gets a slam. You also have a dodge as standard across all characters that gives you iframes. Each weapon class has a skill tree, and then on top of that, your character class has a skill tree as well. These will affect how you play, but I wouldn't say that there's anything in here that is gameplay defining. This is the balance you need to strike with action combat. You have all these intended dodge and action skill based mechanics that you need to keep relevant. Traditionally, MMOs have those checks in their stats in how the player can manipulate them. There's definitely choice, but I don't think anyone's going to be super excited about working out the perfect skill tree. Oh yeah, so you have time powers. That's kind of like the defining thing in Chrono Odyssey. The first one, Temporal tuning, lets you track down certain objectives that aren't marked, scan and follow the footprints on the ground kind of stuff. The second is the ability to summon. That's right after defeating each Void boss, or Void Apostle in this case, they become your Pokemon. Third is a time stop. Fourth is a gravity reduction, and the fifth lets you rewind damage on your health bar. Alright, so let's talk about what I like about the game first. I want to hold up a massive sign that says on it, hey, all future MMOs, this is the way. It's not a secret that MMOs are simply not as relevant as they used to be, and the reason is that they haven't really changed all that much since 2003. Now, I know there are MMO enjoyers. I have enjoyed many. I worked on an MMO as a QA tester, and I know that people don't want to admit that the old formula isn't working as well as it used to, even though it only worked for like 5 titles in total. But let me remind you, you know Berserker of Kazan? Well, that was going to be an MMO. You know Crimson Desert? Well, that was also going to be an MMO. They're not MMOs anymore, they were converted to single player experiences. And these aren't small mom and pop MMO developers. These are the developers of Dungeon Fighter Online and Black Desert Online, some of the top MMO developers in Korea. So yeah, I think if they are changing their tune, it might be time to wake up. The days of following the quest marker across the map just doesn't cut it anymore. You can't undo what Zelda Breath of the Wild has done to open worlds, especially because from the beginning, that's what every MMO Andy has ever wanted. It's just, well, usually they're too open-ended to the point where they become a little like watching reality TV. You're kind of just waiting for other players to do something interesting. So yeah, anyways, getting back to Chrono Odyssey, it tries to put exploration and world interest at the forefront, and that's commendable. It is worth swimming behind the waterfall to find the secret cave, or joining in on a group of people fighting a giant scorpion, or marking down where the red trees are so you can cut them down later to make better swords. Though I will say it still very much has that MMO feel where sometimes it just feels like enemies are pooped out in clumps and they just sit around waiting for the player to yell action. So don't get the wrong impression, the world still feels gamey where it could be more immersive, but more than most standard MMOs, you are actually rewarded for exploring, and that is essentially the fundamental reason as to why I wanted to engage with the game hour after hour. I also like the combat when it works. It strikes a really good balance between action combat skill and also skill rotation. Some of the moves let me grapple the enemies, and that's always a bonus in my books. I will say, like many Souls-esque games, the enjoyment with the combat has more emphasis on the enemy and what they do. Interesting enemies and mastering them makes combat more fun. The Chrono Apostles were a lot of fun. The general enemies can take a fair chunk of your health when you start, but once you get going, they are going to be a little on the trivial side. You know, the highway bandits aren't really bandits waiting to ambush you, they're just men standing in the bushes. There's very little difference between a zombie, a wolf, or a bandit after a while. PvP I can't really speak on, I'll just say it's optional and that's kind of where it should be. There will be endgame PvP, but I didn't see it, so we'll just have to wait and see. The final point of like is that it's a Korean character creator. I kind of just appreciate that Korean character creators allow you to make beautiful characters by default, and it's easy to make them attractive, male or female. Enough said. Now here are my points of concern. This game is in serious need of optimization and bug fixing. Like, why is this horse in the air? It struggles to run at 60 frames. The camera often screws you over in combat, especially when you parry multiple hits. Grass blocks your vision. Heaven forbid there is an enemy that hovers in the air because the camera is just going to chill in the grass while you die. The world lighting suddenly changes when you look around. There's just weird stuff happening often, which is fine in a beta, but a broad audience is not going to accept it if it's similar to this at launch. I stress this because MMOs really need large audiences to simply sustain themselves. You know, if you want to create a party of 5 people, you need 50 people in the game in your area at the same time, and that's kind of just how it works with how people's interests work. Okay, now I know I said that I liked the action combat, but I live in Australia and the closest server was about 150 ms. I am used to this. I can cope with playing the general game like this, but if you are asking me to solo a Void Apostle at 150 ms with parries and dodges while this thing is kind of janking all over the place, this is a shit experience, and it's frustrating because it's essentially a single player component of the game. Why not just make this client side? I mean, maybe there's a reason they can't do that, so I don't know. The devs will do whatever they do, but I do think that they are needlessly giving a poor experience when they could be giving a great experience. Like I said, some of the best fights in an MMO when it works. Point number 3, I know I said that I really like Korean character creators, but Chrono Odyssey suffers from Korean MMOitis. And by that I mean, if you take a screenshot of it and you put it next to screenshots of other medieval fantasy Korean MMOs, you aren't going to be able to tell the difference. Chrono Odyssey really lacks a unique identity and style, and it's going to hurt it. They say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I'm sorry, that's exactly how it works. Everyone is forgettable, you aren't going to remember anyone, the Void Apostles are blank faceless entities, no one has a personality, you aren't going to see a character in the distance with a great axe and think, damn, what a badass, I'm gonna talk to him. This is a sin, and I think at this point it's unfixable. By comparison, I know that Lost Ark isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but you can't tell me that this isn't an intriguing character. This doesn't exist in Chrono Odyssey. Now, I'm not dooming the game, but let's say they fix the optimization. This is why many people are going to leave the game after a month or two, in my opinion, which is disappointing because the cinematics, like in all MMOs, look badass. People want that world, and I think you need to commit to the cringe a little to build a world that is memorable. In the way Chrono Odyssey portrays itself in its cinematics, it needs a little more severity and mood if it wants to bring its world in line with what it's advertising. Point 4, monetization. Here is the forever catch-22 of MMORPGs. You need population, and so you want the barrier of entry to be as low as possible. Free if you can. However, putting in cash shops, battle passes, and cash shop incentives are really immersion breaking. The current plan for Chrono Odyssey is a one-off purchase and then purchasing of cosmetics and convenience items. Convenience items are a slippery slope in that they incentivize the devs to create problems to be fixed. And at the end of the day, if you even draw a line between convenience and pay to win, it's a fine one. Just knowing that something could be less annoying if it wasn't for the business model is enough to turn people off, and Korean publishers, especially Kakao, are not exactly known for their stellar gameplay first point of view. Those are my concerns, and they are pretty big ones. I think the likelihood of the developers clearing 2 out of 4 is low. That said, one can always hope, and I am forever hoping. I really had fun, and I want to convey that I want this game to succeed. But if I'm being realistic, I wouldn't be ready to put any money into it. So it's all eyes on the next beta, and hopefully we can see a Jesus patch. I heard that this beta was a year-old build, and the game is a lot better than presented, but I don't buy that it's substantially better. And if anything, it must be incredibly unstable. And before you call me a pessimist, just think to yourself, if you have 2 advertising strategies, and one gives you 100 customers, and the other gives you 50 and turns 50 away, why would you go with the second option? No rational person makes that choice unless the 100 customer advertising is not really as it appears. Personally, I think they should not release this year if they have the option, but they should continue doing betas and getting feedback. I hope that's what they do. I think a free beta can possibly instill some Dutch courage because it's like, well, yeah, everyone's going to jump on because it's new and they haven't seen it before. You get the butterflies of a new MMO and you start speculating on potential, but then what happens when you have to pay $60? And then what happens when there's a cash shop on top of that? And then what happens in a month when many people have completed the content? Do you think they are going to keep logging in to keep the wheel turning? Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think the current answer is I don't think so. And this is kind of the point I have with all MMORPGs coming out. What problem are you solving? Or what question are you answering? What desire are you fulfilling? Because if the goal is to make a great MMO, you've already messed up. That ship sailed in 2003. That was a long time ago. So if I try to tease out this question myself, I think what people really want is that they want to feel like they are in a world like Elden Ring or V Rising, where the NPCs are moving around the world with purpose, like they are actually trying to complete a task and you can either help or hinder them, but also make it a shared world with the social features that make MMOs great, with endgame activities that encourage group work and reward excellence. I think immersion is the next frontier for MMOs to conquer, and I think the first devs to do it may find themselves in a winner-takes-all scenario because no one can do it yet. Chrono Odyssey points its feet in that direction, but it's not committed. But I really wish it was. So we'll see what happens. I'll have another update for you at the next beta. For now, let me know what you think of Chrono Odyssey down below. Catch ya.